What if the most effective form of war is not convincing people of a lie, but making them doubt whether truth exists at all? What if victory no longer depends on defeating an opponent, but on exhausting their ability to understand what is happening? What if confusion is not a side effect, but a strategy? We are living through a strange moment in history. Humanity has never possessed more information, never been more connected, never had greater access to knowledge. Yet millions of people feel increasingly uncertain about the world around them. Political events become difficult to interpret. Media narratives collide with one another. International conflicts generate more questions than answers. Public figures appear contradictory. Institutions lose credibility, and reality itself begins to feel contested. Have you ever left a conversation more confused than when it began? Have you ever spent hours searching for answers, only to become more uncertain? Have you ever felt that the harder you looked, the less sense things made? If so, you are not alone. Why? Perhaps because information alone does not create understanding. And perhaps because perception has become one of the most valuable battlegrounds of the modern age. For much of the 20th century, psychology followed two very different paths. One sought to understand human potential. Thinkers such as Abraham Maslow explored creativity, meaning, self-actualization, and the question of what allows a human being to flourish. The question was simple: how does a human being become more fully human? Another path asked a very different question. How is behavior shaped? How are habits conditioned? How do rewards, punishments, and environmental signals influence human action? Researchers such as B.F. Skinner explored the mechanisms through which behavior could be predicted and modified. Both approaches expanded our understanding of human nature, but they pointed toward very different horizons. One toward human development, the other toward behavioral influence. It is worth asking which of these approaches attracted greater interest from powerful institutions: governments, military organizations, corporations, advertisers, political movements. After all, understanding human flourishing is valuable. But understanding how human beings behave, react, conform, obey, and can be influenced may be even more valuable to those seeking power. Throughout the 20th century, enormous resources were devoted to understanding behavior. Why? Perhaps because behavior can be predicted. Perhaps because behavior can be influenced. And perhaps because understanding human behavior provides influence over human outcomes. But the story does not end there. As researchers explored behavior, persuasion, influence, and conditioning, another area of inquiry emerged. A darker one: the study of manipulation, the study of deception, the study of psychopathy. Researchers studying psychopathy encountered something deeply unsettling. Some individuals appeared extraordinarily effective at influencing others, not through physical force, not through violence, but through ambiguity, contradiction, charm, deception, psychological destabilization, the erosion of self-trust. The objective was not always to convince. Sometimes the objective was to confuse, to weaken confidence, to make another person question their own perception, to make them doubt their own conclusions, to make them lose trust in themselves. And once a person can no longer trust their own perception, whose perception do they trust instead? Psychopathy, in this sense, raises a profound question. If confusion can weaken an individual, what happens when confusion appears at larger scales? What happens when ambiguity becomes a permanent feature of public life? And why do the strategies associated with manipulation, coercion, dependency, and psychopathy appear so effective at influencing human behavior? Military strategists have long understood a similar principle. A confused enemy is often easier to defeat than a confident enemy. An uncertain population is often easier to influence than a population capable of independent judgment. The goal is not always to make people believe something. Sometimes the goal is to make them unable to decide what to believe. What happens when millions of people are exposed to contradictory signals every day? When political leaders say one thing and then another? When media narratives compete for attention? When wars become battles, not only over territory, but over interpretation? Consider figures such as Donald Trump, whose public statements have often been criticized for containing contradictions, reversals, or ambiguities. Whatever the explanation, the result is often the same: uncertainty, a growing difficulty in distinguishing between signal and noise, consistency and improvisation, clarity and contradiction. And this phenomenon is not limited to any single individual. It appears across politics, media, institutions, governments, and public discourse. When contradictory messages become common, interpretation itself becomes the battleground. And when interpretation becomes the battleground, perception becomes power. Consider the questions many people ask today. What happened in Afghanistan? What happened in Iraq? What is happening in Ukraine? What happened in Iran? Why do major events often seem easier to experience than to explain? Why does reality itself increasingly feel contested? For thousands of years, human beings relied on a compass, not merely a compass of metal and magnetism, but a compass of meaning, a sense of direction, a sense of what is true, a sense of what is beautiful, a sense of what is worth protecting. What happens when the compass begins to fail? What happens when confusion becomes permanent? What happens when uncertainty becomes the environment itself? This series is not an attempt to tell you what to think, nor is it an attempt to provide simple answers into psychology and power, into manipulation and war, into narratives, uncertainty, and the forces that shape our understanding of reality. Because perhaps the defining conflict of the 21st century is not a war over territory alone, but a war over humanity's ability to make sense of reality itself. The Cold War may have ended, but the struggle for influence never disappeared. It evolved, the battlefield moved, and many of us never noticed. This is war on perception,